point of time, especially the actor who is delivering lines. That is something that you have to be very, very mindful of. Note for directors using of stage. Please remember you have the full depth of the Lionel Wendt stage, you have the full width of the Lionel Wendt stage, you can use it. Also do remember that when you are not amplified, the minute you step behind the proscenium arch, the sound carries towards the wings and upward. So we found there are certain instances where as soon as actors step behind, lines were lost. When lines are delivered in this direction, it generally will move into the wings and you will lose text, and sometimes very important text. And that's a key element when you're talking about Shakespeare. So these are elements to keep in mind. Use of time. Now, I think things have changed since I was in school, but when we were in school, we were informed that if we step a second over 30 minutes, we would be disqualified. I don't believe that rule applies now, but it is applicable for your marking. And to a certain degree with our marking today, there were certain elements we had to consider with regard to time management. There were a lot of schools that did, in fact, jump the 30-minute mark. We were not very harsh on it, but with regard to certain elements of which school moves in, which school has to take a step back, there were certain elements we had to consider as well. So just keep that in mind. You don't want that to play on the judges, especially when there is a very tight competition. Moving on to acting, delivery of lines. Of course, we focus a lot on the delivery of the text, which is Shakespeare's text, the rich magic of Shakespeare's text. But remember that there is a lot of magic in your portrayal when somebody else is speaking. I would say the better actors do most of the acting when the other actor is speaking. And the supporting actor, in that sense, if I say supporting, if I can use the word supporting, because of the fact that no text is coming out from that actor, a lot of acting coming from that actor will complement the performance, and that is where you have a complete performance. So that is one aspect to keep in mind. Also, this is one element I think that a lot of schools can work on and keep in mind moving forward, which is that there is a distinction between projection of your voice and shouting your words out. Unfortunately, a number of schools had this as a bit of an issue, where for the purposes of, I suppose, getting the sound across, there was a lot of shouting taking place on stage, pushing your performance from a performance to melodrama. So please keep this in mind. Projecting your voice and shouting your words out are two very different things. And the minute you start shouting, you're affecting your voice, you are affecting your performance in general. So please ensure that that is something that is worked on. Pace and energy. In Shakespeare, when you are performing Shakespeare, since the text is so difficult to understand and deliver, your pace of delivery and the energy in which you deliver your text is of utmost importance. It sometimes is the difference between somebody understanding what the text is and you losing your audience. Please keep that in mind. And in addition to that, keeping to the meter of Shakespeare, which I will get to in just a moment, with regard to the editing of your script. So one aspect of editing your script as well is to ensure that your edit complements the purpose in which you are, or the purpose you have chosen the specific extract for. Okay, what do I mean by that? We have identified two distinct reasons in which you would edit Shakespeare's text. One is to try to narrate the entire story as best as you can. And secondly, it would be to focus on certain key elements of the production. Let's say, if it is Macbeth, you are focusing on a certain couple of scenes where you focus on the journey of the character within a couple of scenes, let's say. Be careful in your editing and the intended purpose. The reason I say that is at certain points of time, there have been attempts, let's say, to edit the text within the scene itself. And by doing so, you are sometimes breaking the meter. That's why I meant about delivery of lines and keeping your edit and your text in mind as well. So just be cautious of that. When you're editing, try not to edit maybe within the scene itself. You have to be a master editor to do that, as Nadishka might discuss with you all, as to how exactly it can be done, especially when you are trying to narrate, let's say, trying to put in as many scenes as possible within half an hour or 20 minutes, whatever your market is. So be very mindful of your editing. I think Shiyan also has some comments to give on that, so I'll keep it down to that point at this juncture. The last point I just want to mention to you about is interpretation. Remember that interpretation and your, let's say, theme of your performance is again a bit of a device that you will be using. It is a device which you should use with care. Sometimes we tend to use certain interpretations, let's say modern take on it, or setting it in a different country, setting it in a different context. Okay? We saw some good interpretations, we saw some interpretations which didn't really add too much value. And on certain occasions, interpretations can take away from the value of the text as well. Please keep in mind that when you're interpreting and setting the context of the play in a different time and space, it has to still work for the entire piece. We saw a good attempt, we saw some not so great attempts. I won't go into details now, we can discuss those later if need be. But remember very much that it is a device, and ensure that the device does not take away from the principal theme of Shakespeare's text also. So keeping those aspects in mind, I hope I wish you all the very best for those moving forward, for those who will not be moving forward. Good luck for your future performances. It was a very fun-filled time for us to be sitting and enjoying your performances. So thank you very much. Good job. Well done. And I'll leave it on to the other two. Thank you.
Okay, so I come from a slightly different background to those two gentlemen over there. I'm a teacher. I've also acted on stage, but not as much as them. My bio, I think, was not as long as that. I tried to keep it short and sweet. Okay. So, I will elaborate on some of the things that Rehan said. But first, I want to start by reminding you of a quote by a famous theatre practitioner that I think you all really need to know in order to master this event that you're taking part in. Some of you may recognize this. Speak the speech. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Hamlet.
Okay.
Hamlet.
Yeah, I heard someone shouting Hamlet. Yes. So I am quoting from William Shakespeare himself. If you have not heard of this particular speech, look up Hamlet's advice to the players. He lived 500 years ago, but when he wrote his plays, he knew jolly well what he wanted on stage. He was also an actor as well as a writer, yes? So look that up. If you can, have it pasted on your rehearsal space before you start your rehearsals for the Shakespeare drama competition next year, and try to follow the advice of the man himself. And I think all of you will do very well. But I will kind of break that down into a few points. Like what Rehan said about shouting, in addition to just getting a lot of volume out, I felt that there were a lot of performances where you were overacting. It was melodramatic. There was too much emotion. Now, I know that it's a very difficult line, especially in Shakespeare, because blank verse, we say it in 3 words, he says it in 30, right? So to get to the point sometimes is very difficult, and the emotions are sometimes very strong. But just because it's a strong emotion doesn't mean that it has to be thrust out directly into the faces and shouted at the audience. Sometimes restraint is more, less is more. And going through my notes, I realized that I had written 90% of the time that there was far too much overacting, far too much melodrama in places where it was not necessary. So think about that when you're acting next time and see how you can hold it in. In your rehearsal process, try saying the speeches in different ways. Try it out shouting loud, try it in a more restrained way and see what works best. Okay, then about understanding the lines. Now, when we were in school, by the way, I realized that I'm older than them and that I've been in the Shakespeare drama competition from before they were. Referencing Shakespeare's plays and learning anything, characterization or what you have it, we had to actually go and sit in a library. We had to take out, books that are this thick and look at an index and then look at a page number and then cross-reference that with another index, and I don't think any of you know what I'm talking about. Right? So, you have ChatGPT. Yes. I suggest that you use it. Because it was quite obvious in certain performances that the people on stage had no idea what they were saying. And that is not an excuse anymore in this day and age. You have to understand the blank verse. I mean, you can't get over that fact. You are acting Shakespeare. But use the tools that you have, and it will take you very far. Okay, editing. I agree with what went before. We had a lot of issues with editing. That was another one that I had noted down in like 90% of my notes. Think of it this way. Don't just try to impress the 3 judges that are there. Imagine that your entire audience is clueless about this play. And then think, where are you starting from? What are you showing? Where is it ending? Because there were some productions that just dove into the deep end with no explanation at all, kind of assuming that we knew the story. There were others that just stopped. There was no ending. Okay, I understand cliffhangers, but this was not cliffhangers. Then also there are subplots in, for example, Midsummer Night's Dream. So you don't want to try and thrust everything into your 30 minutes. It's not like trying to mention everything you know in an essay so that you can get more marks. You need to focus on what you're trying to present and also choose according to the actors that you have. Make the most of the actors that you have. Now, I know that you can put up to 30 people on stage. Doesn't mean that you have to put 30 people on stage. Some schools did it very creatively. There were a lot of people on stage, but they were used very well. But, okay, the younger crowd here may not remember, but some of the others, like the directors, may remember where there have been performances that have won the competition in the past with just 4 people on stage. 4 solid performances that have won. So think about that a little bit the next time you decide what you're going to do. Make the maximum use of who you have. Choose your play, edit your work, think of the message you're trying to give using the material that you have to work with, which is your actors. Because we saw there were some productions that didn't quite do that, and it was sad. Because there was such a lot of talent, it was just not utilized properly. So I hope that you're able to do that better. Because yes, we have to choose 4 people to go into the finals, but there were so many others who could have made a much tougher fight if they had just got all the little elements right. Okay, moving on to the modern interpretations. I loved the fact that you're thinking a little out of the box. But just a word of advice, choosing to do a modern interpretation doesn't mean that you just put on a modern costume and use modern props. It has to go beyond that. It is also there in your body language, in your interactions. It has to be there in every little element of your production. So just glossing it over doesn't work enough. Again, there were some who did it very well and some who it was just frills and fancy and nothing more. Okay, and yeah, basically I want to just end with the fact that we want a lot of subtlety, more nuance. Don't think in terms of black and white. Look for the grey areas. Make us think, make us discuss issues. Because there were certain plays that we spent a lot of time discussing, where was it going? What were they trying to show? Did you agree with this? Okay, maybe you didn't, but we were talking about it. That is why Shakespeare is still very much alive 500 years after the guy died. Right? So, you have to make it real, make it authentic. Think of the message you're trying to give, because that is the way most Shakespeare productions are done in the world now. So you can do it in traditional costume. I'm not telling you that that is bad. You can still do it, but you can still make an impact. So think about all that. I'm going to pass the mic now.
Okay, guys. Firstly, thank you for the applause earlier, and apologies for the long profile. But unlike your excerpts, there is no time limit on the judges' profiles, so that's very moving on, I'll just add a few comments to what Rehan and Nadishka said, because they covered most of it. Why these comments are important and why we're taking a bit of time is the fact that we saw 17 fantastic performances over the last 1.5 days, but only 4 will move on and 13 will come back next year. So these comments are actually for the actors themselves, but also the directorial teams and teachers in charge to take forward. Because a lot of the times, and I think my two colleagues echoed it as well, a lot of the times we saw some good performances on stage, we saw some good actors on stage, but sometimes it could be the editing that wasn't working. It could be the context. It could be something as simple as the way it was set up. So some of these comments, it could be the clarity of words. So some of these comments are important as you go forward. Because what we would like as judges is for our jobs to be harder. We want it to be really tough, and for all 17, to be good enough to be in that final. We don't want to. So our objective when we sit down to judge is to actually give points, not take points away. So that's why these comments are important. So I think just getting back to the fact we saw some fantastic standout individual performances. There were actually some wonderful supporting roles, and we really saw some of the productions coming together as a team, and that's very important because sometimes one actor is not going to be able to, or one role is not going to be able to carry you through, but everyone needs to come together as a team, and I think that's something that we saw. Just adding a few thoughts to what was said. See guys, acting is not just about action, but it's also about reaction. Right? And I think one of the things that we were not seeing, we saw some fantastic performances being delivered, but sometimes those around them not reacting, not engaging. And that sometimes, took away the magic of what was happening on stage. So that was important. I think there was sometimes voice modulation needs to be is important because sometimes there were wonderful speeches happening. Wonderful lines being delivered, but sometimes in the whole heat of the emotion, it was tending to become a little bit shouty, and therefore the words were getting lost. And clarity, I think every year on year you hear judges stand on the stage and give their comments and talk about the clarity of words. So there were productions where the words were crystal clear, and you know that the audience is already engaging with that when your words are crystal clear. So I can't emphasize how important that is. And that's something that again I echo to all the schools. Please, look at the clarity of the words that you're speaking, not just about understanding them, but also in the way you're delivering them, right? So I won't talk more on that because I think Rehan and Nadishka both touched on that. One of the things, again, we liked the interpretation that was given by some of the schools, bringing in new ways, innovative ways of interpreting certain scripts. But what we'd like to see is a little bit more consistency in the execution. Because sometimes the concept was good, but maybe the costumes were not in line with what that concept was. Sometimes the concept was good, but the props were not in line. So that consistency, if you're carrying a concept, go all the way with it, and pay attention to detail. So there were certain times where the concept is good, but suddenly you'd see a costume that didn't fit with that concept. So that's going to let you down. So consistency in executing a concept. If you're not going traditional Shakespeare and you're going in a different direction, take that consistency of execution. The second thing of when you're looking at that type of innovative interpretations, think about how it's adding to the story. Because every school up here, every performance up here is telling a story. So how are you telling that story, right? So if you're using a new interpretation, don't use it as a gimmick. Use it in a way that tells the story better, that tells Shakespeare's words better, right? So that was a comment on that. And just lastly on characterization. So what, as the judges, one thing when we were deliberating, so sometimes when you take a character, when you're playing a certain role, the character, you should look at the characterization and set in the context of the entire play, not just in the excerpt you're presenting. So for example, a villain can't suddenly become a victim. Just because in your excerpt, it makes sense that character becomes the victim. Because that means you're changing what Shakespeare intended. And we saw a few examples of that on stage. So that is very important. You need to base your characterization on what that character is in the entire script, not just in the half an hour, the 30-minute excerpt that you're presenting. Okay, so along with those comments, I wish all the schools all the best. I think we'll be coming out with the results in just a minute. Wish you all the best, not just for this year, but for the next year as well. And thank you to all of you for a fantastic 1.5 days. I think the three of us, we really enjoyed ourselves. So thank you very much.
Okay, we are almost there. So we will start off with announcing the noteworthy performances. So I will just explain that to you first. This year we have decided not to give out nominations specifically for Best Supporting and Lead Actors or Actresses. The reason for that is that a number of excerpts have been chosen in certain contexts that it was very hard to distinguish whether the particular character fell into into a categorization of a lead or supporting. It could have gone either way, honestly. So for that purpose and because of that, we decided to mention the following portrayals who we believe can be identified as noteworthy performances, and from you can take it as nominations if you wish to. If you're already nominated, that's great. But we commend each of these performances because of the nuance that was brought in, the presentation of the characterization and understanding of the text in general, and these performances really did stand out. So the noteworthy performances are as follows. From Girls' School number 1, the characters of Puck and Oberon. From G3, the role of Helena. School number G4, Lady Macbeth. School number G7, the characters of Richard and Margaret. School number G10, the characters of Helena, Hermia, and Oberon. School number Leontes. School number G13, Petruchio and Catherine. School G14, Petruchio and Romeo. School G16, the character of Paulina. And school G18, the characters of Julia and Sylvia.
Okay, now the results. We start with the best stagecraft. School, and we're announcing the winner directly. So like we said, there's no nominations, no runner-up, right? So the winner directly. Best stagecraft, School G1, Holy Family Convent. We next have Best Novices Award. So this is for, as per what the organizers have informed, this is for the school that's taking part for the first time in the competition. So the Best Novices Award, School G10, St. Okay. Next we have Best Supporting Actress. So I'll read the number of the school, the name of the character, and then the name of the actress. Best Supporting Actress, School G14, Grumio. Sarati Mosinga Gateway the Hero. And Best Actress for the 2023 competition, School G18, Sylvia. Devi Dhanayaka, Devi Vidya.
Okay, so now the moment you've all been waiting for. This is in no particular order, it's not according to the marks. We have G13, Ladies College. G18, G10, and the last spot goes to G4 Visakha. Congratulations, you have 2 weeks. Okay, let me tell you one more thing. Although you got into the finals, no one was perfect. Right? There were cases where you could improve. You have 2 weeks to do that. The marking was tight. So we don't know who's going to win.